Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hey, welcome. I want to thank Herman Veal. I affectionately call him the voice, quote unquote. And if you go to our link tree, chiefmischiefmaker.com, you'll see at the very bottom, there's a link to him if you're looking for voiceover work. He's terrific. And today we have a really cool show, I think, in store for you. I'm going to be sharing a music video called The Key. And we're going to talk about the Rosetta Stone and transforming it into a modern metaphor for problem solving and critical thinking. You might be wondering, well, what the heck is that all about? How do we go about that? Well, hang in there. And then, so there's 7 steps, 7 letters in the word Rosetta. And we're developing, so you see right here, well, it's backwards, I think. So it's Rosetta and 7 steps. And we're going to go through this whole process. But the song you're going to hear in just a little bit is my way of sharing the whole overview in 4 minutes. So yeah, on my card there's a term called Chief Mischief Maker. Some people put a CEO, some people put a CFO or COO. I put a CMM on my card, Chief Mischief Maker. It's known as being a gentle disruptor, and also someone who lives the curiosity-driven life, always peeking around the corner. How is this going to come out? And what's going to happen here? So that informs everything that we're talking about on these shows. Now, first of all, with the Rosetta Stone, I want to share just quickly kind of a quick backdrop on how I got involved with the Rosetta Stone. I acquired a replica of the Rosetta Stone. From my understanding, there are only about, I guess, a dozen to 15 were made by the British Museum, a 1-to-1 reproduction of the face. Now, the Rosetta Stone is 45 inches tall, 30 inches wide, 11 inches thick. The original one at the British Museum weighs 1,700 pounds. And the replicas that I have created, designed and created, are in museums and private collections and all over the world. And one was used in the movie Night at the Museum Part 3. One of the things that really grabbed my attention was when I saw a show on the History Channel. And they brought together a group of SMEs, subject matter experts, and they came up with a title, 101 Objects That Changed the World. And they wanted to have a kind of a hierarchical view of these objects. And I don't know how long they spent, months, maybe a year. And I'm sure that behind the scenes, there were some very robust, vigorous discussions, especially as they got down to the last 25 or last 10 on the hierarchy. And what stunned me is that number 1 was the Bible. Now, that didn't stun me so much because of the impact around the world. Number 2, coinage, money. Okay, yeah, that I can agree with that. But number 3, that threw me for a loop. The Rosetta Stone was number 3 on this list. It beat out a rocket ship. It beat out airplane. It beat out the automobile, the wheel, computers, cell phones, Gutenberg press, all these different things that you think, would be in the top 3 on the list, and it beat them all out. And I thought at that point in 2013, I'm very fascinated by the Rosetta Stone story, this epic drama surrounding the Rosetta Stone. but I must be missing something here. There's something that I'm missing. So that's when I really began to embark upon the whole idea of creating a 5,000 square foot traveling exhibit, and also an exhibit on the metaverse that would impact K through gray, kids of all ages, and would invite people in light of quantum computing, which is basically the qubit, which can simultaneously, the computer is made up of ones and zeros, and they can only focus on one thing. But quantum computing can focus on a number of things at one time, and can solve a problem that would take just an enormous amount of time for a computer to solve in a matter of seconds. And we also have what is known as spatial computing. And you see the visors that people put on, and they visit all kinds of places around the world, and there's all kinds of purposes for the spatial computing. And then you add to that artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, and so many other things that we're becoming more and more aware of. Now, all three of those, I call that a triple revolution. We had the Industrial Revolution that changed the skylines of cities around the world, changed modes of transportation. On the flip side, child labor issues, pollution issues, all became part of this double-edged sword. But net, I think most people would agree that the Industrial Revolution was an incredible thing that happened around the world. Well, now with this triple revolution, my desire amongst the folks on my advisory board, Smokey Robinson, Dr. Ben Carson, who many know was the first to successfully separate Siamese twins, and Kathy Hughes, who is the founder of, I believe, the 7th largest media network in the country, in the United States. Now, the thing is that we're creating these so that we can impact young people, especially this generation. For those of you who are older, you maybe grew up in an era where there were VHS or there's pre-digital and everything was analog. And you were, I know I grew up without a television in a little town of 2,000 people in Alberta, Canada. And was on the ice, minimum 2-3 hours a day from late October to early April. And so the problem solving aspects were totally different. And so now, just like the Cleveland Clinic says, muscles can atrophy within 2 to 3 weeks of no resistance. The brain can atrophy. If you Google it and just look at a brain scan of a brain that's atrophied, it's not a pretty sight. And my concern in all of this is that this generation will grow up, yes, exercising their brains in certain ways, but to me, there's nothing as cool as AI, as cool as quantum computing, as cool as spatial computing are. There's nothing that can replace our God-given human brain. It is just astonishing the gift that is to us as human beings. So, without further ado, we're going to in a few seconds here. I want to share with you a song, a music video. A good friend of mine, Mark SX, wrote this song and produced it. I asked him. I said, I want it to reach young people, especially. It's done in a hip hop type fashion. So some of you, hip hop is not my genre of music. Some of you might say, I don't know about this. Hang in there, because I want you to think about the impact this is having on K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, college, university. Now, if you're in another country like India or Japan or UK, Australia, you might be having a different set of grade bands, but all in all, it's an opportunity, I think, to create some things that help our young people understand problem solving. So, Mel, in the back room, would you please put on that music video?
I know. I can't go anywhere without being recognised. I'm a dead ringer for the famous Rosetta Stone. Huh? As a celebrity lookalike performer, the Rosetta clone, I'm accustomed to awkward stares. Go ahead. Look closely at the letters and symbols engraved into my face. It's unmistakable. Ever wondered where that language software program got its name? From the Rosetta Stone, a 1,700-pound slab of rock with a lot of the same words etched into its face in 3 inscriptions about 2,200 years ago. Boy, that chiseling process must have been painful, like getting tattooed all over your cheeks. I guess it turned out okay, because that Egyptian rock ended up becoming a world-renowned language expert, helping Jean Champollion crack the code to hieroglyphics in 1822, which unlocked the mystical secrets of ancient Egypt. How's that for becoming famous? Well, being a rock star is also in my DNA, and fans are crazy about me. I create a buzz wherever I go, especially when performing songs like Are You Clonesome Tonight?, Tears of a Clone, or A Clone Again, naturally. You get the picture. How about bringing a celebrity impersonator like me to your organization? There are a select number of us willing to travel anywhere in the world and mesmerize audiences. There's no other way to say it. We translate into visitors.
Well, there we are. It's the Rosetta clone, which is a little character that I created who sings songs like Clone Again, naturally, and Tears of a Clone, and One is a Cloniest Number, and going to be the mascot for this whole project. We're going to play the key in just a little bit, in about 15, 20 minutes or so, and going to be discussing the whole elements around the 7-step problem-solving process. And so we'll start right away. First of all, the R stands for, first of all, to recognize the problem. And this is there's a multifaceted nature to recognizing the problem. It is a situation where, yes, some people are tremendous at recognizing problems, but are short on the solutional aspects to it. And so what we want to do is to create a curriculum that is, once again, K, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, different levels, so that when, let's say, a 7th grade teacher visits the exhibit in Boston or Philadelphia, then, of course, once the template is done, we're going to create 2 more for China, 1 for Southeast Asia, 1 for Europe, and 1 that'll travel to around the various cities around the world that aren't serviced by the other orbits, like Moscow, Sydney, Rio de Janeiro, Joburg, and places like that, Tel Aviv. And so when a teacher is bringing his or her students to an exhibit or going on the metaverse and experiencing the exhibit, then what happens is that they can then download a curriculum that will take it deeper and wider for students into understanding about problem solving, which will include this Rosetta 7-step problem solving approach in a process, and which we're writing right now. So the R, how we get into first recognizing the problem, there's a certain gentle artistry to this, because there has to be the element of emotional intelligence attached to recognizing a problem, both internally and also person A trying to help person B, because we're going to develop a process for people to become a certified solutionist in problem solving. And so I remember when I was a kid, I think I was probably about 17 years of age, I became a certified lifeguard. And one of the things that we at the swimming pool that they taught us is that someone who's drowning, you don't approach them head on, because they will pull you down with them. You have to keep stiff arming them and then pushing it until you get behind them. And there's a certain approach to saving someone who is drowning. and then you can put your arm around their neck and do the scissor kick and bring them back to safety. Similar dynamics when someone is in a lunch counter as a student, and the other students are moaning and complaining about some problem at school or in their personal lives. Instead to say, you're lucky. This is your lucky day. You're sitting next to a certified solutionist, and I can help you with the problem. Instead, to kind of approach it in a certain way, and especially in marriage, the typical idea for a husband when a spouse has a problem is to immediately try to fix it. And I don't know all the women in our viewing audience, either live or watching this as a podcast. It's more or less, please don't try to solve my problem right now. Just give me a hug, be present with me. And then maybe a day or two later to be able to say, hey, I've been thinking about this. This is a good time to talk about it and come up with some measure of solutionizing regarding the problem. Because problems are very important to us. I can't remember who made this statement, this comment, this quote, but they said you cannot climb a smooth mountain. You have to have the crevices, the rocks. Someone else said that we're either walking toward a problem, we're in a problem, or we're walking away from a problem. But there's always problems in our lives, and there's different degrees of problems. So they are, first of all, recognizing the problem. It's the whole idea of recognize the intensity of the problem. So what I've developed is something called fire maps. And I've developed a process of approaching, for instance, you take the acronym FIRE MAPS, and the F stands for financial problems. The I stands for intellectual problems. The R stands for relational problems. The E in fire maps stands for emotional problems. The M in fire maps stands for mechanical problems. And then the A stands for addictive problems, addictions in our lives, both positive and negative. And then the P stands for physical problems in terms of our health and other aspects. And then S stands for spiritual problems, moral, ethical issues, and those types of things. And the relational might get into race relations, or relations that transcend religion or class. Those types of things, I think, are very important as we take a look at this whole process. And then with the fire maps, we then also have a situation where we take a look at the whole element of in the fire maps is that we talk about developed three levels of intensity with problems. And so there's what's known as campfire problems. There's what's known as bonfire problems. And then there's what's known as wildfire problems. Now we got a question here. It says digital is visual, and reading you must imagine. We're losing our imagination and substituting special effects that require response speed but not reflection. What do you think, Joel? Comes from Carla. I think you're right. I think it's what concerns me is that also there's the realm of our conscience, because someone can claim ownership. Well, I wrote that book. I wrote that song. I wrote that that paper, and really ChatGPT did the writing and put it together. And so it can become a thing where people take ownership. And this is a slippery slope, take ownership for things. And when it comes to intellectual property, I just read yesterday that, different leaders in the tech industry are talking about IP issues and the ownership of IP and trying to do away with that. And so there's just IP stands for intellectual property. And so I would agree, Carla, that no one can create, when you go to a movie and they do all the creating for you, that's one level of creativity and imagination. But when you have to imagine something just through the spoken word or the written word, and the feelings, the everything else, it's just a whole nother level. And that's where our God-given brain comes into play. So thank you, Carla, for that. Yes, so the intensity of problems, we have the campfire, that's regular stuff. And I'm creating an inventory around this so that someone who is looking to solve a problem will take a look at, is this a campfire problem? The campfire problems are just the normal stuff. Do you own a car, an automobile? Do you own a home? There's always something, right? Need a new roof, new siding. Maybe the sump pump isn't working in the basement. If you happen to have a basement and it floods, there's always something. I call that campfire problems. And somehow, some way, we can kind of figure out, well, a roof might last 20 years. So if I'm 18 years into a roof, or 25 years, 18 years into a roof, I might need to start thinking about. So that's all part of the problem solving process. So it doesn't leave the element of a campfire problem become a wildfire problem all of a sudden. So there's some elements to problem solving, I think, that can become preemptive, if you will, that we can anticipate certain things. So the campfire is you prepare for a campfire. If you have a backyard, I don't know if you're in an urban area, but if you go out in the woods and you prepare a campfire, first of all, you look around, you make sure there's no low-hanging branches that can catch on fire. And you put stones around it so that you will contain the fire. And then you bring sticks and you build it and you prepare for a campfire. And that's just like owning a home or an automobile or whatever it might be. And the second is the bonfire problem. And once again, with a bonfire, you prepare for a bonfire, right? And you really make sure there's no branches around, in the distance. There's something dangerous about a bonfire with all of the sparks going into the air. And your human body intuitively knows just the Goldilocks rule. What is too close? What's too far? And as the embers come down to embers, and you lean instinctively in, and you know exactly where your body's supposed to be. It's a perfect spot for that bonfire. But there's the idea of danger. So this is what I would view as an entrepreneurial type of a project, where you come up with an idea, developing a new widget, new goods, new services, and then things start taking off. And before you know it, you're running out of product to sell or to ship. And you're going, oh my goodness, that's called the bended knee, where you're just things are happening so fast. That's the bonfire. And once again, sometimes it's almost impossible to anticipate when things get out of control. But it's good to know that when you're you're moving from a campfire to a bonfire problem, that you have assets, you have people you can bring in to help you work through that. And then when we have the wildfire problem, that's when you better bring in accounting, legal, all kinds of folks in to help you deal with this situation. All hands on deck. I don't care if you're working on a project, sir, ma'am, that's due Thursday at 5 o'clock. You're going to have to step away from that project, and we have to come and every head is on swivel, and we're going to deal with this wildfire issue. So those are the elements of intensity that come with a problem. And that's why I think it's important for people to recognize. And sometimes you don't even need an inventory to figure it out. You just go, oh, this is a campfire, this is a bonfire, this is a wildfire. And it's a very easy thing to figure out intuitively. But we're still going to create some sort of an inventory, because when you just that gray area between a bonfire and a campfire may need to have some technical aspects, and just say, well, it leans one way or the other, or vice versa, from a bonfire to wildfire. So that is the recognizing a problem. It is so important, I think, to not be the proverbial ostrich putting our head in the sand. If a bill is due financially, intellectually, you're going to be talking with someone or being involved in some sort of a wonderful debate with somebody about some intellectual issue. political issue, whatever it might be, to prepare in advance for that. Some relational, maybe there's a cross-cultural aspect or an age difference, an elderly and a younger person, trying to connect on some level. In your family system, perhaps a grandparent with a grandchild or great-grandchild. And so it's once again, recognizing what the issues would be. And I would think, my wife and I, we have 2 grandchildren, ages now 4 and 6. And I'll tell you, they bring such joy. I wish we had grandkids first. I'm kidding, but I'm kind of not kidding too. It's just such a wonderful, stress-free type of situation. And we can jack them up on sugar and send them home. Not really. We don't do that. Well, maybe sometimes we do give them ice cream. But relational aspects, and then emotional, it's our emotions pay the price for what our mind thinks. There's a whole school of thought in psychology about that. And so it's the whole idea of understanding when there's an emotional issue to maybe kind of pull the threads. And when did this start? Did it start this morning? What was the upsetting event that produced this feeling? And what was I thinking that helped to nurture this particular feeling? And sometimes pulling those threads and going back to the upsetting event can, if it's not a long-standing thought issue, that can really help to solve that problem and figure out, oh, that's what happened. What was I feeling? I was feeling disrespected. I was feeling judged. I was feeling joyful, whatever it might be, positive or negative. Those are the kinds of things that can happen in emotional in the fire maps. And mechanical, the whole idea of I enjoy working with people, but I hate working with fixing a lawnmower. It's just, my wife says, you got to prepare now. Joel's working on a lawnmower. He's working on something mechanical. And so it's just understanding the different elements of how we approach and recognize problems and deal with them. Addictions. We're going to be talking in a future show about addictions and the ups and downs of an addictive personality and nature. But it's the whole idea of understanding addictions, and to be alive is to be addicted, and in some fashion, some way. And so, and addictions can be a kick and then become a kick in the teeth real fast. Now that cycle, the addictive quality of certain aspects. And then the physical, just being in tune with our bodies and just realizing that, I often think that as we get older, that we actually become healthier because we're more in tune to our bodies. When I was a kid, I would just put in crazy hours, and then I would feel this. It's like I like it to little gremlins with pins behind my eye, just poking my eyes. And whenever I got that feeling, I'd still keep pushing, and then I get really sick for like a week or a few days anyway. Now, as I'm older, when I just start feeling that, I know I've got to take a nap. I got to get my sleep. I need to make sure I'm drinking water, stay away from processed foods and all these types of things. And to be aware, in tune with what's happening in our bodies. And then the spiritual, moral, ethical aspects. I personally, I look at the moral, ethical issues and, look at in solving problems. It is, it's something that is, it's worth the time to understand what the foundations are for one's morals and values. Is it just something cultural, something I learned from my parents? What's the basis for it? And where does it take me? And how does it affect my relationships? That very important elements in the fire maps. So, Mel, if we could just play that song, The Key, that will then give us kind of a primer. Remember, folks, this is in a hip hop form. And if it's not your genre of music, hang in there, because it's the genre of music for a generation, many in the generation that we're trying to reach.
May the stone be your guide. May the stone be your guide. With the key inside. With the key inside. Trust the process. Great things take time. That history provides. Rosetta. There's a key to the code. The patience of a seed when it grows. Some way, somehow, it already knows. That even as a promise, it's a soul. Series nice, AI saves time, but none of it replaces the computer of the mind. The bridge to the past and the future is the same. My love, everything is in the name. Recognize the problem and analyze the plan. Why it's where I want to be, not where I am. Every new turn finds me in the same jam. $1 million question, maybe I should phone a friend. A bad apple just might be rotten at the core. A resolution won't reveal itself till I'm sure. A head in the sand never will see the sun. Some episodes require reviewing season 1. Obtain information, be clear about the issue. Take your time, same time, beware of its misuse. Research all information that's available. Books online, experts, every data pool. Brainstorm, seek feedback, then observe. Reflect on experiences, then network. Model simulate to advance in the journey. Stay up on the latest, continue in the learning. Specify the goals, define the finish line. Criteria to measure progress in real time. Study all resources to keep it realistic. Deadlines, keep urgency at close distance. Prioritize and try not to think too much. Yeah, trust what you see and don't blink too much. 2,000 years silent, 23 to understand. Planet rejoice, ancient Egypt speaks again. Rosetta. There's a key to the code. The patience of a seed when it grows. Some way, somehow, it already knows. That even as a promise, it's a soul. Series nice, AI saves time, but none of it replaces the computer of the mind. The bridge to the past and the future is the same. My love, everything is in the name. Evaluate options, pull a scale out, yeah. Which is still fishy, how to get a smell out, yeah. Weigh different solutions, give each a score. Pros and the cons, press each to see more. Cost, feasibility, impact and time. Sustainability, are there more facts to find? Choice, benefits, plus strengths and the weaknesses. Which is in the lead and which is being more sheepish. Test the solution, try to prove it wrong. Champollion was closest, but his stand wasn't alone. His theories were evaluated at the Tannin Stone. See, never fall for trying to do it all on your own. Take action, meaning it's time to implement a detailed plan with the steps to represent. Assign roles to the team, KPI. Some of the best answers come in late replies. Assess the results, the final steps upon you. A matrix of metrics is what it all comes to. What are your indicators? Since 1822, we've used the same key to learn all the fundamentals. A stone spoke 3 ways, we knew the first 2. Tried but couldn't come up with an alternative truth. Technology is beautiful and lovely, but it can never match that feeling of discovery. Rosetta. There's a key to the code. The patience of a seed when it grows. Some way, somehow, it already knows. That even as a promise, it's a soul. Series nice, AI saves time, but none of it replaces the computer of the mind. The bridge to the past and the future is the same. My love, everything is in the name. What's the solution? Solution. Problems are easy. What's the solution? What's the solution? What's the solution? Problems are easy. What's the solution? Ay, may the stone be your guide. With the key inside. Trust the process. Great things take time. That history provides. Rosetta.
Wow, Mark did a great job on that. Mark SX, so appreciative of his genius, his capability of putting together a song like that. So that gives you kind of a quick overview in 4 minutes. I have something here from what's known as Gentleman's Magazine, the first magazine in history. And this is from December of 1832. The first time that there was a mention of the Rosetta Stone was in 1802. And I also have that particular magazine also. Here is some images of Rosetta. My goodness. I got one of these crazy cameras that just kind of moves around. So you get a little behind the scenes. That was Charles Barkley in my office here. But anyway, it's so you have Rosetta, and these are some images of Rosetta. And it becomes this whole story of the Rosetta Stone, this epic drama, because we could very easily just put together a curriculum dealing with the 7 steps of problem solving. But it's my opinion, and the opinion of many others, that when you wrap it in a story, an epic drama, it has that much more impact. And so the R we already talked about is recognize the problem. Recognize the intensity of the problem, the type of problem, and the emotional intelligence involved in approaching someone with a problem, whether it's ourselves or someone else. And also to embrace a problem, to run toward the problem and just say, this is the stuff of life. And to be driven by a curiosity on how this is going to work out. I think that's the stuff of life. That's the spice of life. And it's just a whole different mindset, I believe. So now we go to the O, which is the whole idea of obtain information. And so when it comes to obtaining information, what's important is that we are realizing that and you embodying the story of the Rosetta Stone is that they went about in 1799 doing a lot of information gathering and data gathering, which thrives in the midst of questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question in the problem-solving universe, and so it's important to recognize that to provide an environment in your family system, on your job, for people to ask questions about things, and to really check out different layers of questions, and to encourage that. And so one of the things in obtaining information that the folks in Egypt, in the Napoleonic Egyptian military campaign, the savants, these intellectual people that were experts in botany, architecture, etymology, hydrology, so many different other disciplines, they want to know, are there any other artifacts to which we can compare with similar hieroglyphic symbols on them? So that was question number 1. Maybe not number 1, but it was in the mix of questions in obtaining information. And this is where the genius of inquisitiveness comes to play. And in fact, when they read the Greek on the Rosetta Stone, and you may remember that there's 3 different inscriptions on the Rosetta Stone: the hieroglyphics, the demotic script. We get the word demos, democracy. The common people use this, is a cursive form of hieroglyphics. And then the Greek. It was Greek because of Alexander the Great conquering Egypt. And so they knew what the Greek said. And in the last sentence of the Greek, it said the same thing will be in all 3 inscriptions. And so, and there was also the hint that this wasn't the only stela. It was not the only rock with this information on it. And so they went all about searching for another Rosetta Stone rock, because this was broken off. It was actually should have been higher. They only had 14 lines of hieroglyphics. And so, could there be another full-size Rosetta Stone in the field somewhere, being used as a doorstep or the front entrance of a large temple or something like that? That was an honest question. And are the hieroglyphic symbols, are they alphabetic? Are they phonetic? Are they symbolic? Are they a combination of all 3? Another honest question in obtaining information. Are the hieroglyphic symbols, do we read them from right to left or left to right? Because Hebrew, reads opposite from reading English. And so with this language, these inscriptions, how do we figure this out? And then another thing is, can we read we can read understand the Greek, and if the same things are written there, as I mentioned before, are the 14 lines of hieroglyphics sufficient to crack the code? And what other artifacts contain these hieroglyphic symbols that can provide more clues? And what is unique about the symbols surrounding the oval? Because there are at least 5.5 in these 14 lines. There's 5.5 ovals, and that's really how they came about cracking the code, is understanding the symbols and the inscriptions within those cartouches. And then what if we actually took the time to count the letters in all three inscriptions separately, and then try to mathematically compare the cadence of the other two inscriptions with what we know about in the Greek inscriptions? So, that's another valid thing to consider. Does this letter match with this one here? And if so, what are there some clues there for us? And so the whole idea there is obtaining information at all costs. No questions stupid. Let's go for this, and then specify goals. Some who wrestled with the cracking of the code to hieroglyphics, they were driven by ego. Maybe some were driven by the goal or desire to be famous, because once the Rosetta Stone had been unearthed, taken back to Egypt. Sorry about that. Taken back to Egypt, they were, this sparked an international treasure hunt. What is this? How do we figure this out? And so some people were driven by fame and by, driven by their ego. And so, most of the 19th century people who had been bitten by the code cracking bug used any means possible to figure out the meanings of hieroglyphics, so that all the humans that were interested in the story could better understand the mores and the folkways of the ancient Egyptian peoples and their culture. And so it became a very interesting thing. So I guess the pro tip here would be to clarify your goals in problem solving as we use the story, the grand epic drama of the Rosetta Stone to understand a little bit more about this. Specify the goals. What do you want to achieve by solving this problem? Is it to be wealthy? What outcomes are you looking for? Now, another thing is that there in obtaining information and specifying goals is that there are many people involved in this whole process. In fact, we go back to the 9th century, and Washia, who was an Arab, he was the first one that actually started messing around with the hieroglyphics, trying to figure this out. Because remember, for centuries, people were coming in, looking at obelisks and the sides of temples, and they're saying, "What is going on here? Is this? Did they let loose graffiti artists, a kindergarten age, around on the land? What's going on here?" So in the 9th century, this gentleman, and then about 100 years later, another Arab by the name of Al-Nadim, he messed around with hieroglyphics, trying to figure this out. And then we move forward into the 17th century, and we have the German priest Kircher. In the 17th century, he was trying to figure things out. They came up with some crazy ideas, folks that were involved in this. We had in 1762 a Frenchman by the name of Bartholomew. He messed around with hieroglyphics, trying to figure it out. We had the Danish priest in the 17th century, Zoega. He also messed around with it. We had some Italians involved in the process, and they were all trying to figure out this thing, this cracking of the code. And of course, Thomas Young later on in 1800s, he was kind of a Johnny-come-lately. He was. There's a book written about Thomas Young. He's a medical doctor, called the Last Polymath. In other words, he knew a lot about a lot. In fact, he wrote 64 entries into the British Britannica Encyclopedia. Can you imagine that? 64 entries. That's crazy. When you think about one man involved, he understood light refractions. And in fact, we have even today, the Young's rule, where you have a drug to be, legal pharmaceutical drug to be given to an adult. There's a certain rule that he uses to be able to say, okay, you can reduce it by this much, and then a young person can take that same medicine and it's safe for them. And so many other disciplines. Well, he came along later, and he had some major breakthroughs in terms of phonetics. One of the first major steps was taken by him. He made significant progress recognizing that some of the cartouches on the Rosetta Stone represented names of pharaohs, and he provided the first clues to the phonetic nature of the hieroglyphics. And he did some meticulous analysis of this. De Saussure, who actually was the teacher of Jean Champollion, he came up with some ideas also. And in fact, De Saussure warned Thomas Young, don't share this stuff with Jean Champollion, because he will steal it. He'll steal the information. Now, I don't know if that's true, but as this teacher, I think he might have been onto something. I don't know. There's a lot of national pride between the French and the British on who actually gave up the best clues. Although Jean Champollion is the one who is credited for the cracking of the code in September of 1822, 23 years after the cracking of the code of the finding, the unearthing of the Rosetta Stone. And then we have something that we can call evaluating objects. So ROSE, we evaluate options. So in many ways, the people from around the world who were weighing in with various possibilities, they were in their own information silos. And if you work in a corporation, you know what that's all about. Where this person over here or this group is tasked to do some things, and many times people don't share. In the scientific community, there's a lot of pride in coming up with a solution to something, some disease, or cracking some code of some illness or something like that. And sometimes there's these silos. I don't want to share it because I want the credit. I put a lot of brain damage into this, a lot of work, and I don't want to give that up. So the whole idea here is that when you have all these different scholars involved, they were exploring possible solutions, but they were incomplete by themselves. But as the drab of information began to make its way back to Jean Champollion, he at the time, he was from Figeac, France, but he was in Paris at the time, trying to figure this out. A young man, when he was in teens, I think he understood 16 languages, or Coptic, Arabic, and his dad was a rare documents dealer, rare book dealer. So it is not one does not have to stretch their imagination to realize that his inspiration to want to crack the code to hieroglyphics came from maybe his dad had some documents from Wassia from the 9th century in his bookshop, and because he could understand Arabic, maybe he was poring over some of these documents about hieroglyphics at a young age. And then when the Rosetta Stone was unearthed in 1799, something sparked inside him. I want to be the one who cracks the code to hieroglyphics. And so, you have all these different silos. This was not an enterprise, designed for sharing little to no information with others working on the same problem. And so the pro tip here is no excuses when solving a problem. And you can translate this into a financial issue, intellectual, mechanical, relational, spiritual, physical, moral issue that you're wrestling with in your life, ethical issue. No excuses, no quitting, no blaming, no shaming. Just this epic drama provides hope, revealing that there's no need to wait for a perfect team to solve a problem. I've traveled around the world working with organizations and helping over 55 countries. 7 words in my brand for my company, Freeman Institute, dealing with people who drive you crazy. Those 7 words have dragged me around to over 55 countries around the world. And what has happened many times is that, I try to work to help people get out of their silos, to work together. But the truth of the matter is, and the Rosetta Stone story is to my point, you don't have to wait for a perfect team. You don't have to wait for everything to be, everyone is smiling and working together and sharing all their information with other people and playing nice and all these kind of things. It can be an opportunity to say, okay, we got big egos, long periods of silence. We have diversity, cultural diversity, language diversity. We have different goals involved with different people. I don't think Thomas Young was driven at all by ego in anything he did. He shared freely with what he came up with. And so, whatever was driving people, despite what was driving them in their goals to work on this initiative of cracking the code, regardless, they still solved the problem. And that's what I find so intriguing with the Rosetta Stone story, is that we have so much here involved with the specification of goals and then working through all of these in a way that minimizes, you get minimal clues, wrong assumptions, no previous experience, coupled with long periods of silence, geographical distance, as I mentioned, big egos, silos, all these things were part of the picture. And yet still in September 1822, the code to hieroglyphics was cracked, which then unlocked the secrets of ancient Egypt. It's crazy, isn't it? And hopefully the information I'm sharing can translate into whatever you are dealing with, whatever problem you are looking to solve in your life. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from this aspect is just don't quit. Ask different questions. Spend more time. If it's worth starting, it's worth finishing. Be a good finisher in the sense that you evaluate beforehand. Is this a project worth finishing? Okay, I'm going to finish it. Well, as a young man, I would start things and go, oh, a squirrel, there's something new. And my attention span would only go for months. That was a long time on some project. And then I would get involved in something else, and someone would say, well, you were working on something about 6 months ago. What happened? Oh, and I'd come up with all sorts of extenuating circumstances to why I didn't finish that. And then there came a point where I said, I am going to be someone who finishes well, who finishes what I start. And then I would start things that weren't worth finishing. And then I had to kind of figure the Goldilocks rule out in that, what's just right. And now in my 70s, it's I don't start things unless I'm willing to walk through and finish it. So explore the possible solutions. Once you've studied the problem, brainstorm with the potential solutions, and then consider the pros and cons of each solution, evaluate the feasibility and the impact on your goals. And then we get into the realm of testing solutions. And this, I think, is so important. This one man, Jean Champollion, with this tenacious drive to be known as the one who was cracking the code to hieroglyphics, he organically became the epicenter of information and the epicenter of analysis, the epicenter of testing solutions. And his knowledge of Coptic and his knowledge of various other Semitic languages, coupled with his dedication to understanding, to want to understand hieroglyphics, gave him an edge over all others. And so I don't care how, there might be other people smarter than you. I remember, for 20 seasons, I was one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA, National Basketball Association. And there are many players I talked with, and almost everyone to the man told me that there were guys in high school and college that were better than them, but just didn't have it up here, didn't have the mental toughness for dealing with this. So, Champollion, he was an unusual child. He was mercurial, highly emotional, quixotic. He was brilliant. And everything I've read about him, shows that he was, he might have been on the spectrum. I don't know, in some ways, but his knowledge of Coptic and various other Semitic languages and all these different things, he just hung in there, and never once did he exhibit the bent toward being a team player. Excuse me, not once. And so while others shared their information with him. I guess he just said, I'm going to be the one to crack the code. So the pro tip here is identify possible solutions based on the information gathered, identified a range of possibilities and in this as solutions, but before implementing a solution, test it on a small scale to see how it works in practice. And this can involve maybe conducting a pilot project if you have the luxury of doing so, or running a simulation, or using some other testing methods. Brainstorming and other ideation technique can be helpful to generating multiple potential solutions to the problem. And then the last few moments we have together for this particular show is take action. Oh my goodness. So many people who get involved in the problem solving process will stop at testing solutions. Just take action. Sometimes, and by the way, this whole process can take seconds, can take minutes. You can work through this process very quickly in some situations. And as you get older and as you ideate more about different problem solving aspects, sometimes you can get to the taking action very quickly. It's not a long, drawn-out process, like 23 years for the Rosetta Stone in some issues. You begin to get this native ability and a sense of what's working. I guess it comes like in the entrepreneurial journey. You go down one blind alley, and you come back to the center, and you go down another blind alley, another one. Hopefully, each time you're going down a blind alley, you're not going down as far as you did previously. You're learning from the previous blind alleys until you finally say, oh, okay, I can go down this blind alley for 4 or 5 minutes and figure this out, that it's the wrong way to go. And then taking action, is just the whole idea is just to implement the solution. Once you've chosen the solution that best meets your goals, it's just time to put it into action. You got the computer, you got all the stuff in your office. It's just like the entrepreneurial journey where they spend 6 months preparing to take action. And then they're frozen. What do I do now? I got everything perfect. All the documentation, all the understanding. Yeah, I'm ready to go. But take action. And then we get into the realm of ROSETTA is then to assess the results. And this is something where, later on, Champollion, after he cracked the code, he wrote a book. I don't speak French, so I'm not going to try to butcher it. But he wrote some things in 1824. Remember, cracked the code in 1822, and he continued to test his results. In 1828, a mere 6 years after cracking the code to hieroglyphics, he embarked on a 16-month tour of Egypt, and he was looking all over the place and seeing and testing his solution and making sure that this was right, because he was in a bubble with just the Rosetta Stone with 14 lines of hieroglyphics. Now he wanted to make sure, does it work on this obelisk? Does it work on this temple? Is this information, is it something that can really help? So anyway, I'm going to bring this plane in for landing. I'm real excited that we're able to spend this time together. We've got some very exciting shows coming up for you, and you are the reason we're doing this, because we want to serve up some things that hopefully will stimulate you intellectually, but also challenge you along with myself to live our best lives. Thank you. Ebity. That's all, folks.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.